Hey guys, welcome to another project build. In this project, we're going to be building a mobile application using the Ionic 2 framework. Now, if you don't know what Ionic is, it's an HTML5 and JavaScript mobile framework. And what it essentially does is it allows you to create apps with JavaScript and then wrap that web app inside of a native container. Alright, so it's perceived as a native mobile app. And it gives you access to a lot of the different native components. Alright, it also gives you a customizable UI and a ton of custom elements to work with. Now, it's important to know that Ionic 2 uses the Angular 2 framework. So I would suggest that you learn at least the basics of Angular 2 before getting into Ionic. It is possible to learn both at the same time, and for what we'll be doing, you don't have to be an Angular 2 pro by any means. I would suggest checking out my Angular 2 in 60 minutes video before attempting this. Alright, now with Ionic, you're building a core app, but you can export it as an Android and an iOS app. Alright, usually if you're building native applications with, Objective-C for iOS and Java for Android, you'll have to build two separate applications, and that's extremely expensive, especially where Objective-C and Java developers are much more expensive than JavaScript developers. So you can see that this is a really nice framework to have. For iOS, you do need a Mac, and you also need an Apple developer license, as far as I know. So we'll be focusing on Android. Now, most likely you want to get the Android SDK and Android Studio installed. It is free. You'll want this if you want to use the Android virtual device, which is what you're looking at right here. I'm not going to go into the whole installation process. There are a ton of videos on that on YouTube and tutorials if you want to get that set up. But I will show you exactly what you'll need to install. Alright, now before we do that, let's take a look at the application we'll be building. So it's an application called Reddit, and we're using the subreddit API to basically just fetch a list of posts or Reddits within a certain category. Alright, so you can see we're getting the image, the title, we're getting the score or the thumbs up, and the comments. Alright, so by default we have this set to food, but if I go and I click this, and this is extremely slow by the way, just because it's the virtual device. This would be much faster if you exported it and installed it on a physical device. Alright, so if we want to change it to sports, we'll go ahead and click OK. And you can serve this in the browser as well, and it's much faster, and that's how we'll be developing. Alright, so you can see that it's updated to the category of sports. Now, this is the main page. If we click on View, it'll actually take us to an inner page or a details page. Looks like that image isn't showing up for some reason. Let's try this one. I think some of them don't have images. We can put in a simple if statement in there to take care of that. But you can see we have the image, the title, the author, the score, and the comments, and then a button to view it on Reddit. Alright, so that's the details page. Now we also have a settings page where we can change the default category. So this will actually change it in local storage so that when you come back to the app, the category will be changed. We can also, let's see, we'll change it to back to food. We can also change the limit. Alright, so I have it set to 5, but we can go ahead and change that anywhere from 5 to 25, and of course you can add more if you want. So we'll click OK. And let's go ahead and save changes. And now you can see we have food and we have 10 listings. Alright, and then we just have a simple about page which just gives us a description and the version number. Alright, so that's what we'll be building. Pretty simple. I think it's good for a starter application. And the API is really easy to work with. If you look up here, we just need to make a request to a URL like this, and we're just basically changing the category name and the limit. Okay, and this is what it gives us, just a bunch of JSON content. Now, of course, you'll need Node.js installed to install Ionic and Cordova. Cordova is basically sits on top of it, and that's what allows it to turn the JavaScript code into native code. Alright, so if all of this sounds really difficult, don't worry about it. It's really not that hard. We're not going to actually publish it on a physical device. We're just going to get it to the point where it's running on the emulator, which is pretty much the same thing. After that, you can do, I think it's Ionic build Android, and it'll build out an APK file, and you can actually install that on your physical device. Alright, I don't even have an Android device to do that with. But let's go ahead and get started. If we look over here, we're at ionicframework.com, docs/v2/setup/installation. And we're going to kind of follow along here. Now, Ionic 1 actually uses AngularJS or Angular 1, but we're going to be focusing on version 2, which uses Angular 2. So let's go ahead and open up a command line. Just going to open that up on a separate screen. Alright, so I'm going to go to the directory where I want to create the application, and I'm just going to close this out. Alright, so let's say CD. I'm going to go to my C drive and then projects, and this is where I'm going to set up the application. Oh, for Android Studio, let me just show you real quick. Now, the SDK manager you can get to through Android Studio, or if you have the Android environmental variables, you can use this command here. Now, what you're going to want is obviously the SDK. At this point, the latest is API 25, which is 7.1.1. You're also going to want the build tools for that version. Okay, you're going to want where is it? You're going to want Haxum, this right here. This is the emulator accelerator. You're going to want to install that, so check that off. And you're going to want a system image for that virtual device. I would suggest this Intel Atom. If you're on 64-bit, use the 64 version. And then that'll let you set up an emulator. Alright, so if we say Android AVD, Android Virtual Device, that should open up the device manager. You'll see I already have one here, the Nexus 6, but you want to create a new one. Give it a name, select your device. Now the target is the API you want to use, and then this is where you'll select the system image. Okay, for instance, the Atom, Intel Atom. Alright, you can go ahead and create that. Alright, but I'm not, I mean, there's a lot of videos on YouTube to show you how to do all that. So let's get back to our project. Now, if we look at the documentation here, you want to install Ionic and Cordova using npm. So you'll want to do npm install global Cordova and Ionic. Alright, I already have it installed, so I'm not going to run it, but you'll want to do that. And then once you do that, you can use Ionic start to create a project. So let's go ahead and say Ionic start, and we're going to call this Ion Reddit. And you want to make sure you use --v2. If you don't use that, it's going to install Ionic 1, which we don't want. Alright, so let's go ahead and run that. And that'll create the whole folder for us. And it could take a couple minutes. So what I'm going to do is pause this, and I'll be back when it's finished. Alright, so that's done. It took about 1.5 minutes, not too bad. So what we're going to do now is cd into Ion Reddit. Alright, and then from here we should be able to actually start our application. We can serve it in the browser by saying Ionic serve. Okay, so it goes through a little process here. But once it's started and we start to edit our code, it'll live reload. Alright, so there it is. There's our application. We could actually publish this now if we wanted to. It's basically just a boilerplate. We have a home page. If you look at the tabs down here, click About. We have an About page, which has nothing on it. And then a Contact page, which just has their Twitter handle. Alright, so that's the boilerplate. Now we're going to leave this running. And let's go ahead and open up our code editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code. I like using this with any Angular project because it has nice TypeScript highlighting. And then what we're going to do is open up the folder. So let's see, projects, and Ion Reddit. Alright, so let's take a look at the structure here. Now, the main folder we're going to be focusing on is the source folder. That's where all of the Angular 2, all the components, the pages, when we create a service, everything is going to go in this folder. Now let's take a look in the app folder. Alright, so we have the app.module file. Now if you've followed along with my Angular 2 in 60 minutes video, or you just know Angular 2, then this should look familiar. This is basically where we bring in all of our other components and we add them to ng module. Alright, and you'll see we have the about page, the contact, the home page, and the tabs page, which represents the tabs down here. Alright, in addition to that, we have the app.component.ts file. This is basically the main app component. This is where we add our service providers and so on. Alright, we're not going to do too much in this file though. All of the subcomponents are actually in this pages folder. So you can see we have about, contact, home, and tabs. Alright, if we look at about, it has 3 files. It has the TS, okay, which is the main component file, the HTML file, which is the template, and an SCSS file for styling. Okay, it uses Sass by default. So if we look at the TS file, you see just like any other Angular 2 application, we're bringing in component from Angular Core. It also uses a nav controller, okay, so that we can change pages easily. Then we have the component decorator with the selector and the template URL. And then the class name, which is by default the component name and then page. And then our constructor, and we're injecting the nav controller here as a dependency. Alright, if we look at the HTML, Ionic has its own directives, so we have this Ion header and the nav bar, that's what you're seeing up here. And then all the content will go in here. Alright, so if we go ahead and say this is about, and we save that, you'll see that it'll auto reload, and then if we click about, you'll see that that was added. So the workflow is really easy with this Ionic serve feature. Okay, so same thing for the contact and the home, and then in tabs, if we look at tabs TS, we're just bringing all the pages in and we're adding them down here to these tab 1 root, tab 2 root, tab 3 root. And then if we look at the HTML, we have these Ion tabs. Alright, so what I want to do first is create our Reddits component or page, whatever you want to call it, and the settings page. So let's create a new folder. Let me just get rid of those. Alright, so inside pages, we're going to create a new, not a file, a new folder called Reddits. Alright, and then inside Reddits, we're going to create a file called reddits.ts, TypeScript file, and then a new file called reddits.html. Okay, that'll be our template. You can create the SCSS file if you want, but we're not going to do that. I don't even think we're adding any extra styling, really. Alright, so what we'll do here is let's copy what we have in the about HTML. So we'll grab that and put that in Reddit's HTML. Up here, this is going to be the main home page, so for the title, I'm just going to say Ion Reddit. Okay, and we'll say this is home. Save that. And then let's copy what we have in the about.ts file. And we'll put that in Reddit's TS. And then what we'll do is change the selector to Reddit's. Change the template to Reddits.html. And then the class name is going to be Reddit's page. Alright, so we'll save that. Now we want to do the same thing for the settings page. So again, in pages, let's create a new folder called settings. and we'll create a file called settings.ts and then settings.html. Alright, and again we'll copy what we have in about.ts, paste that in settings. We're going to change the selector and the template and the class name, settings page. Alright, and then let's copy the HTML. Okay, up here we'll say settings, and we'll say this is settings. Alright, so now we have our two pages. Now we want to add them to the tabs down here. Alright, but before we do that, whenever you create a new page or a component, you need to add it to app.module, just like you would with a standard Angular 2 app. So we're going to go ahead and go up here. Now we're not going to be using the contact and home page, so I'm just going to replace that. So this will be Reddit's page, and then you want to point to it, which is Reddits/Reddits, and then let's change this to the settings page. Settings. Okay, and then we want to change it here in the declaration, so this will be Reddits and settings. Same thing here, Reddits settings. Okay, so let's save that, and that file should be all set for now. And what we want to do is, let's see, so we're getting an error here. No component factory found for home page. That's fine. What we need to do is go down to our tabs page, our tabs folder, and go to tabs.ts, and we're going to change this home page to Reddit's page. Change that, and then contact, we'll change that to settings. Okay, and then down here, let's do the first tab will be the Reddits. Okay, then we'll have, I actually want the settings page to be the second one, and then about will be the third one. Save that, and then we'll go into tabs.html, and let's change this to Reddits. This one will be settings, and this one will be about. Now, as far as the icons, okay, so Ionic has its own set of icons. So for this one, let's see, so we'll keep that as home. For the settings, we're going to use construct, and then for about, we're going to keep the information circle. So let's save that. And now down here, you'll see for Reddits, we have our home icon. Settings has the tools here, the construct. About has the information. All right, and it says this is home. If we click on settings, that's good. About, that's good. So our navigation is complete. Now I want to change the look a little bit. I want the header and the tabs area to have a blue color. So to do that, we can go to, let's see, we'll go to our Reddits HTML, and where we have the nav bar, let's just add color equals primary, and we'll save that, and you'll see that turns blue. Alright, now we have to do that on every page. You'll see settings, we'll have to change that as well. So we'll add that here. I think secondary is green by default. And let's see, about HTML. Let's say color primary. Whoop, I added an M there, that's not right. Alright, and then for the tabs, if we go to tabs HTML, we're going to add that there as well. Primary, and if you go to the documentation, it has all these different styles and things you can do with the UI. Alright, so let's close these up and figure out what we're doing next. So what I want to do next is I want to fetch data from the API and then bring it into the home screen or the Reddit's page. So we need to create a service for that. And if you've used Angular 2, you know that when you're making any kind of request to a third-party API, you want to put that in a service. You don't want to stick it in a single component because you probably want to access it from multiple components. So we're going to create a folder inside the app folder called services. And let's go ahead and create a file, and we're going to call this reddit.service.ts. Alright, and this is going to work just like any Angular 2 service. We're going to import the injectable package so that we can inject it as a dependency. Okay, all this stuff is the same. It's going to be from Angular Core. We also want to use the HTTP module, so we're going to say import HTTP from Angular/HTTP. Let's see, why is that? Oh, I put 3 T's. Alright, and then we're also going to use observables. We're going to use reactive extensions, so we're going to say import rxjs/rx. Alright, and that's all we need to import. So let's add the injectable decorator there, and then we can create our class. So export class, and we're going to call it Reddit service. Alright, so let's define our properties. We have our HTTP. We're going to set that to the type of any. We also are going to set the base URL, and that's going to be a string. Alright, now let's create a constructor. Okay, now in order to use the HTTP module, we have to inject it as a dependency right here. So let's say HTTP, and then we're just going to set this.http equal to HTTP. Okay, and then let's define the base URL. So the base URL for the Reddit API is going to be https www.reddit.com/r. Alright, and then let's create a function called getPosts. And this getPost is going to take in a category and a limit. Alright, and then what we're going to do is return this.http. We're going to use the HTTP module, and we're going to make a GET request. Okay, so we're going to make a GET request to this.base URL, and then we want to concatenate the category. So we're going to put slash, and then category, and then here we're going to say slash top.json and limit equals, and then we'll concatenate that limit variable. Alright, so that's making a request to something like this. Alright. So this is an observable, so we have to add a dot map to it. So let's get rid of that semicolon and say dot map. And we want to map the response to res.json. And that's it. That will return all of the posts to us as an observable. Alright, so let's save that, and that should do it for our service. Very simple. So when we create a service, we're going to add it as a provider in the app.component.ts file. So let's go up here and say import Reddit service. Alright, and let's see, where's that going to be from? So we're going to go /services/reddit.service. Alright, and then we're just going to add it as a provider right here. Providers, which is an array, and then we're just going to add Reddit service. And that's it. So we'll save it. And then we're going to go back to our Reddit's component. So pages, Reddit's, reddits.ts. And then we're going to bring the service in here as well. Let's see. import Reddit service. Okay, so that's going to be from /app/services/Reddit.service. Okay, so that brings it in. Now we have to inject it as a dependency. So in the constructor, we'll put a comma here and say private Reddit service, just like that. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is we're going to use a lifecycle hook called ng-on-init, and this runs whenever the component is rendered. So for instance, if we say console log on init ran and save it, and we'll open up the console here, and let's see, right here you'll see on init ran. Alright, so what we want to do here is we want to use that service function, that get posts. Now I'm not going to put it directly in here. I'm actually going to point to another function called get posts, and it's going to take in a category. For now I'm just going to hard code sports, and then the limit will say 5. Alright, so let's create get posts. Alright, so get posts is going to take in category and limit, and then we're going to use the service, so Reddit service dot get posts. We're going to pass in the category and the limit, and then it's an observable, so we need to use dot subscribe, and in here we'll pass along response, and we're going to use an arrow function, and then for now it's just console.log the response. Okay, so we'll save that, and we should get a response down in the console, hopefully. Yep, there it is. Okay, so we get this data, children, and then we should have our articles. Okay, you'll see. Yeah, we have the title right there. Okay, so what we want to do with this response is we want to make it available. We want to make the posts available to our template. Alright, so we're going to add them as a property. So let's up here we'll add a property called items. We'll set it to any, and let's see, we're gonna think for a second. Okay, so we're gonna say this dot items, and we're gonna set that to response dot data dot children. Okay, and then we should have access to those within the template now because we set this dot items. Alright, so items should be available in reddits.html. So let's go there. And we're going to use some custom Ionic directives here. We want a list, so let's say ion list. And inside there we'll have an item. Alright, now this ion item, this is where we want to loop through the items, so we're going to use an ng4. Okay, and if you know Angular 2, you know what an ng4 is. It's just a for loop. We'll say let item of items. Alright, and then in here, let's test it out. We'll put an h2, and we're going to use some interpolation here so that we can use a variable. And we're going to say item.data.title. Okay, save that. And there we go. Now we're getting titles. Alright, so if we were to change this to 10, we could get 10 of them. Alright, so we want the thumbnail in here. So what we're going to do is use another Ionic directive called ion thumbnail. Okay, now we only want this if there's actually a thumbnail, so we're going to use an ng if. So we'll say if item dot data dot thumbnail. Then we want to display an image with the source, and the source will be that item dot data dot thumbnail. Okay, so then we have the title. Now I also want the thumbs up and the number of comments. So under the H2, let's put a paragraph, and let's put ion-icon. Okay, so this takes in a name. We're going to use the thumbs up icon. Thumbs up. And let's see, to get that from the API, we use item.data.score. Okay, that'll give us the amount of thumbs up. All right, and then let's copy that. Oops. Okay, and then this one here, we're going to use the chat boxes icon. And then we're going to use item.data.num_comments. Alright, so let's take a look at that. And let's see, why is that not aligned? Oh, we're going to want, on the thumbnail, we're going to add item-left. Alright, now if you want to learn more about the elements that Ionic offers. Let's see, Ionic 2 ion list. Right here, component documentation, and you can see all the different stuff over here, alerts and buttons and lists. Okay, it's different kinds of lists. We're using this thumbnail list right here, so you can see it actually gives you the code. Alright, this is a really good resource for information on Ionic. So that looks good. Let's add some spacing between these two icon things here. So I'm just going to put in NBSP twice. Alright, so that looks good. Now, the next thing we're going to want to do is have a button to link to the single Reddit or the single post. So let's go under the paragraph here, and we're going to put a button. We're going to give it a attribute of ion button clear, and we want to align it to the right. So item right. Alright, and let's give this the text of view. And then what we want to do here is add an event. So it's going to have a click event. And this is just standard Angular 2. If you want an event, you just put it in parentheses. And we're going to call a function called viewItem. Alright, and we're going to pass along item.data. So everything to do with that single item in that loop, in that iteration, is going to be passed along to this function. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that. And then we'll go back to reddits.ts and we'll add viewItem. Now, what we want to do is we want to switch pages. So that's what this nav controller is for. So we should be able to say, actually, first of all, we want to take in the item. And then we're going to say this.navController.push. That's how we can change pages. And we want to go to details page, which we haven't created yet, so don't worry about that, we will. And we can send parameters along with it, and we just want to send that item. Alright, now the details page we're going to have to import once we create it. So let's say import details page. Okay, and that's going to be from details/details. So let's go ahead and create that inside pages. We're going to create a new folder called details. Okay, new file, details.ts, details.html. And let's just copy what we have in about HTML. Okay, and right here for now we'll just say details. Save that. Then we'll copy what we have in the about TS. Okay, we'll change this to details. Oh, my mouse batteries are running out. Details page. Alright, so again, we created a new page, so we have to add it to app.module. Okay, that's going to be from pages, details. Alright, and we're going to add that here. Make sure you put a comma. Save that. Alright, so if we click view, now this is something that happened. You'll see that this is kind of weird, right? Now if I click that, it actually takes us to the page. Now to get rid of that step in between, that weird step, which took me a while to figure out, we need to get rid of the selector for details, okay? So for some reason that it causes it to do that. So if we just get rid of that, and let's reload. And now if I click view, it just takes us right to details, okay? Alright, so far so good. Now remember, we want to access the item that is being passed in. So to do that, we're going to use the nav params package, which is part of Ionic Angular. So right here, we can add nav params. Alright, and then down here, let's add a property for the item. I'm just going to say any. Alright, and then what we'll do is just say this dot item equals, actually, you know what, we have to inject that as a dependency right here. So we'll say public params and set that to nav params. Okay, and then right here we'll say params dot get, and we want the item param. And that's it. We'll now have access to that entire item. So let's save that, and then we'll go into the details HTML. And for instance, let's change this. We should be able to say item.title. Save. And now if we click view, you'll see that the title is now the actual title of that subreddit. Alright, and we have access to all the data for that item. Now I want to use a card for this page. So if we look at the documentation and we go to cards, let's look at, see, as I scroll down, this will change too, which is cool. I think we want that, the image. Yeah, this right here, image cards. So I'm going to copy this, and then we're going to paste that in here. Okay, now let's change the image right here. And we can actually get this with item.preview.images. You could use item.thumbnail, but it's going to be very small and expanded, so the resolution is going to look really crappy. So some of the posts will have an image here. So images, we want the first one in the array, and then we want .source.url. And then right here will be the title. So we'll put item.title. Alright, and then we'll get rid of this paragraph. And what I want here is a list. So we'll say ion list. Okay, we'll put ion let's see, ion item. And we're going to use an icon here. So let's say ion icon, and this is going to be the person icon. And let's assign it to item left. Okay. And let's say author. And then we're going to use ion note. And let's put item.author. Okay, that should give us the author. So let's save that, see what we get so far. If we click this, okay, that one actually doesn't have an image. Alright, so you can see we have the author here. Let's actually give this note ion right. Item right. Alright, so now you can see it's aligned over. Alright, and if we want to get rid of this right here, if it doesn't have an image, we should be able to copy that and just give this an ng if, and then just paste that in there. Unhandled promise, cannot read property. What? ng if. That's kind of weird. Expected token. Oh, maybe I don't need these. Huh, that's still showing. Alright, well, I'm just going to keep that for now. I don't want to slow the video down. If you guys want to look into that, you can, if you don't like that icon right there. And if you have a solution, go ahead and paste it in the comments. So we'll just take that out for now. Alright, now under the author, I want the score and the comments. So let's copy this ion item. Okay, we'll paste that in twice. This one here is going to be the score. So we'll change this to item.score. And then for the icon, we're going to give it thumbs up. This one here will be chat boxes. Okay, so we'll say comments and change this to num_comments. Alright, and then finally we just want to link to the actual Reddit page. So we're going to go under the list and we'll put an A tag, but we want to format it as a button. Let's give it a target of blank so it opens in a new window. And then the href. Okay, now the href is going to be http reddit.com/ and then we can insert double curly braces and then item.permalink. Alright, so let's save that. And then, okay, that looks good. View on Reddit opens it in a new page. Cool. And let's add a block attribute to this as well. That just makes it go all the way across. Alright, good. So we can now list all of our Reddits. We can view this individual post. So that's good. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to have a filter up here so that we can filter out the categories. So to do that, let's go to reddits.html and we're going to go above this ion list and we're going to create another ion list. Okay, so let's see. Let's do ion item, and we'll have a label, say ion label, and let's add the fixed attribute here, and the label will say category, and then we're going to have a select button, so ion-select. And let's say what we want to happen is when this changes, we want a function to emit. So let's put in an event handler of ion change. Okay, with standard Angular 2 it would just be change, but with Ionic it's ion change. All right, and we'll say change category. All right, and we're going to add an ng model here. Okay, we want to bind this to the category property. And we also have to have a name with the same value. Alright, so inside the select we're going to have a bunch of options. I'm just going to grab these and paste them in. Now you can use any subreddit, any categories you want. I'm just using these ones. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that. And now you see we have a select list. Alright, it's not going to do anything yet because we need to create the change category function. So let's go to Reddit's TS, and we'll go down here and say change category. Now we want to set category as a property here, so let's say category any, and let's see, let's actually add limit as well. And then what we'll do is create a get defaults function. Okay, so let's say get defaults, and for now we're just going to set this dot category equal to sports, and we'll set this dot limit equal to 10. Alright, now this get defaults we want to run automatically in the constructor, so we'll say this dot get defaults, like that. And then instead of passing hard-coded values into this get post, we're going to pass in this dot category and this dot limit. Alright, and then when we change the category, what we're going to do is just call this again. Okay, and this time this dot category is now bound to this right here, this ng model, so it'll change to whatever we select. So let's save that, and you'll see it's automatically set to sports. Now if I change it to food and click OK, it changes them all. Alright, for some reason news doesn't have any images, but that's alright. Alright, and it's not the app, it's the API. For some reason that category doesn't have images. Okay, so that's working, the filtering's working. Now what we want to do is the settings. Okay, so for settings, we're going to have, it's going to be kind of similar to this, so I'm going to copy what we have here in reddits.ts and paste it in settings.ts. Alright, and then we'll just change that settings. Alright, it's going to have the items category and limit. Actually, I'm sorry, we don't need the items. And let's see, we're bringing in the Reddit service, and we don't need get post or view item or change category. We do want the get defaults. So let's go ahead and save that. Oh, actually we don't want the ng on in it either. We don't need that. So let's save that. Alright, so now we need to do the template. Right now it's just this. We need to have our form where we update the limit and the category. So let's go to settings HTML, and I'm going to just paste this in and go over it. So we have a form with a submit function of set defaults, and then we have a field here. This is just like we have on the home page. We have the NG model category and then the different categories. Then we have another select list for limit. NG model is limit, and our limit numbers, and then just a button to save changes. Alright, so let's save that. And now if we click settings, you can see this is already set to sports and 10. That's because we have the get defaults right here. Now what we want to happen when we submit this form is we want to take the values and add them to local storage. So let's create our set defaults, and we're going to say local storage dot set item, and we want to set category, and we just want to set it to this dot category. Okay, we're going to want to do the same thing with the limit. So we'll save that and say limit, set that to this dot limit. Alright, so that's going to be whatever is in the form that we submit. Okay, and then what we want to do excuse me, is just navigate back to the Reddits page. So we're going to say this dot nav controller dot push, and we want to go to Reddits page, which we have to import, and we don't need the details page, so we'll just replace that. Alright, and then we just want to change the get defaults here and in the Reddits. So we need to check local storage. If there's something there, we're going to set it to that instead of this. So let's say if, I'm going to say if local storage dot get item category is not equal to null. So if it is set, then we're going to set this dot category equal to local storage dot get item category. Okay, and then we'll have an else. Else, then we'll just use this. Alright, and we're going to do the same thing with limit. Copy that. So this will be limit. Okay, set that, limit, set this, limit, and we'll set it to 10 by default. Alright, so that's our new get defaults. So we also want this same thing in the Reddits component. So let's just copy that. Okay, we'll save this. Alright, and we're going to go to reddits.ts, and we're just going to replace that. And save. And it should be at sports still and 10 because we haven't changed it. Now let's go to settings and let's change this to 5. Click OK and then save. Alright, now you can see it's updated to 5. If we go and we set to, let's say, food, click OK, save, now we have our food posts. And if we reload, it's still food. Alright, so our application is essentially done. The About page, we can just go to About HTML, and I'm just going to throw this in here. Just some date, just some text. Alright. So that's it. That is our application. Now, if you want to run this in the emulator, we're going to have to go to our command line. And you're going to have to add the platform. So if you want it to be an iOS app, you need to do, I think it's Cordova platform add, and you could do iOS, but we're going to do Android. Alright, so that took about 2 minutes or so. Now we want to test it in Android in the emulator, so let's say Ionic run Android. And that might take a couple minutes to start up. Alright, so that should be starting up. Alright, so it looks to be working. Let's go ahead and try to change the category. Oop. I can't stand how slow this thing is. So we'll say food. Okay. And there we go. So that changed. Good. So settings. Let's say we want just 5. Click OK. And we'll save it. And now we're only getting 5. Good. So the settings are working. Check the About page. That looks good. Alright, so we now have our application. Now, if you want to build the APK file and try to get that installed on your physical device, you can do Ionic build Android. And let's open up the folder. So let's see, projects, and Reddit. It should build out, actually it should tell us the directory that it builds it in when it's done. Okay, so there's the directory, so it should be in platforms, Android, build, outputs, APK, and there it is. So you can take this, and if you Google how to install an APK file on a physical Android, it should tell you how to do that. Alright, so that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe, please leave a like. If you didn't like it, leave a dislike, whatever you can do. And this is based on a couple of the projects in my Angular 2 projects, 12 projects course. So you probably want to check that out if this interests you, this kind of stuff. Alright, so that's it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.